program of ours. I am Reverend G, and I'm delighted that you are choosing to spend this time. This an event to which we had to register, and we are recording this, so those who have registered and may not be able to attend tonight will receive the recording. Well, we will all receive the recording, but the benefit of recording is that if somebody is not able to attend, they can still enjoy this program that we are creating tonight. And so you are joining a program that is hosted by the Unitarian Universalist Community Church in Portage. And our guests tonight are Doctors Bonnie and David Paul. You are joining us from California. And before we begin, we get into it in earnest, I would like to remind you that all this programming is possible because of your generous donations. So if you are so inspired, we invite you to donate $1, $5, $10, whatever is possible. And you can do that on our website. We have an app. So here, Joe is sharing the different ways in which you can donate. And you can also mail a check. So once again, thank you for coming. And now we shall begin. So Doctors Bonnie and David Paul. We met maybe yesterday, or a couple. It was yesterday, wasn't it? For just a short and very lovely conversation, and then obviously I read up on you a little bit. I stalked you online as I usually do with all of our guests, and you know what I'm thinking now? Since we just have few people in the room, why don't we all go around and introduce ourselves just very shortly? And so please share your name and also share why is it that you chose to attend this particular program that we are offering. And I will be calling on you, and I'm not going to call on David and Bonnie just yet. So Dawn.
Hi, I'm Dawn Renner, and I just thought it was a really interesting topic, and social justice is definitely something I'm interested in, and I wanted to hear more of what you're up to.
Thank you, Dawn. Judy. You're muted right now. Judy, you're muted. Judy, you're muted. Okay, there you go.
I'm Judy Hall-Seth, and I'm interested in what you're doing.
All right, thank you. Freya. And you are muted as well. And still muted.
Hi there. I'm Freya Lake. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Community Church, and I am always curious and interested in knowing what I may learn about.
Thank you, Freya. Eric.
Yeah, I'm Eric Nelson. Again, I'm a member of Unitarian Church. I'm deep into mindfulness practice, and I'm very interested in how our emotional literacy can improve health and well-being. And I think it was Joe, or I can't remember the guy's name, wrote "We're All Doing Time." It was an interesting book about being in prison, and we're all kind of in our own world of bars and chains at some level. But I guess what drew me to this is the compassion or service in action. I've been a student of Ram Dass's for a long time, and he talks so much about service as the heart of spiritual practice. So I'm curious about that.
Thank you, Eric. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hayes, and I'm curious to hear how you get the prisoners' attention. I think it would be a tough crowd to work with, and I am pretty amazed that I know people do it, and I think it's requires a pretty cool message and a pretty cool means of delivery. And I live by the belief that we have a freedom to choose our thoughts, our actions. We are in control of that. So ready to hear your spin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Miriam?
Hello, I'm Miriam Epskamp. I'm the Director of Religious Education at the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. And I am always interested in the transformative journey. And I think that it sounds like that your work that you're doing is transformative and that it has transformed you as well in the doing of it. So I'm interested to hear your story and hear about your journey and the work that you do.
Thank you, Miriam. Deborah?
Hi, I'm Deborah Warner, and I help with marketing for UUCC. And I've been a huge fan of Viktor Frankl's and Man's Search for Meaning for quite some time. And I just have a huge heartfelt feeling about people who are incarcerated that, there, but by the grace of God go I. And and so I just think, it's absolutely fabulous that you reach out to them, that you listen, and that you help them understand themselves in a way that is meaningful and helps them grow. And obviously your teachings have probably relevance for your volunteers as well. And it has relevance to all of us because we all struggle, I'm sure, with the freedom to choose in our daily lives. So I thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Deborah. Karen? You are muted, Karen. Still muted. Can you hit the space bar on your computer, on your laptop, or?
I think we're on a phone. You might want to try swiping. Swiping right.
Still muted.
Well, you can always put your thoughts in the chat, maybe.
So I can tell you that Karen's one of our longtime volunteers. So
Okay.
She's a surprise visitor. Thanks for coming, Karen, and we'll make sure to figure out how to give you a voice at some point in this time together.
Okay. Well, welcome, Karen.
Joe, maybe can you override her mute and unmute her?
I asked her to unmute, but I guess she didn't see the
prompt.
Yeah.
Joe, do you want to share?
Hi, my name's Joe. I'm a member of the church, and my job tonight is just the tech, so I'm gonna try and keep the meeting moving along, okay?
Thank you, Joe. And then we have a phone number here, 650-714. And is that nothing?
It should be California, so whomever is there.
Okay. Well, if you can speak and you'd like to, you're welcome to. If you can't, you can't. All right. Okay, then we move on. And unmuted.
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Yes. Hi.
Oh, hi. It's Susan Green here, and I'm not familiar calling in on my phone. So thank you. They just told me to hit *6. So I am just so grateful to be here. Every opportunity to hear Doctors David and Bonnie speak. I've known them for about 13 years, and I've been so grateful to volunteer with the Freedom to Choose and Donate for about 5 years. And I actually went thinking, because of my advanced degrees in counseling, that I wanted to be of service. And the surprise, well, I shouldn't say surprise. I'm embarrassed to say this, but what I received back from the participants or the incarcerated individuals was, I have to say, some of the most life-changing, continues to be, because I'm going to be going to the upcoming 20th anniversary in March, that underlying life-changing work that I've ever done for myself personally, and the impeccability and grace of the program to me is just incredible. So I'm grateful to be here.
Wow, thank you. That's an endorsement if there ever was one.
Thank you so much
Not a
for being
plan.
here,
Sorry,
Susan.
not a plan.
Thank you, Susan.
You're
Karen,
welcome.
Karen, it looks like you changed devices and you're muted still.
Yeah, there we
Oh,
go.
wow. And she can speak.
Okay, hi, everybody.
Hello, Karen.
So I have been participant in the Freedom to Choose group for 18 years.
Wow.
I've gone to the prisons over 30 times, and it is whatever Susan said, I ditto it. It is one of my favorite things that I do in my life. It's the most incredible experience to participate with the men and women who are some quite resistant, some very open to learning. And I always walk out of there just like, oh, I'm so happy I'm here. I learned so much about myself. Bonnie and David were my teachers at University of Santa Monica. So I have that. And they were wonderful and continued to be so inspiring to me in my life. So yeah, I'm really happy to get to share that. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Judy, welcome, Judy. And Judy, would you just introduce yourself and just in a couple of words, share with us why is it that you chose to attend tonight? What do you hope to get out of this?
Hi, I like Thoughtful Thursday because we always get into things I wouldn't normally find by myself. So that's one reason. This sounded interesting. It's nothing I've ever heard about.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Well, Bonnie and David, thank you so much for taking time out of your precious schedule to spend it with us. We're very, very grateful. And obviously, you're both very highly educated. Bonnie, you're a psychologist. David, you're a physician as well as a psychologist. Is that correct? Did I get that right? Yeah. And in fact, you became a psychologist a little bit later in life following an accident that you had to recover from. And then I get the impression that this prison ministry wasn't your first ministry. I think this was just an offshoot of what you were doing, and so it was a natural development, and we'd love to hear about that. We'd love to hear about how did you first start creating a program? What was the inspiration for that, and then how did this prison ministry grow out of that?
Those are all really great questions, and you know, and while Susan and Karen will know what we're talking about, I thought maybe we have a very brief introduction, so people have a sense of what it is we're doing and how is it being done. So I think that would be a good place to start. So Bonnie, you gonna run the slideshow?
Sure, I'll do that. And thank you all for coming. It's great to have an intimate group like this. So we enjoy getting to know people. So when we get to that part where we'll invite questions, please feel free. It's really fun when we can respond to things that are meaningful to you. And I took a few notes from what you shared just at the entry in the introduction. Okay, so let me see, sharing my screen here. So we are with the Freedom to Choose Project, which is the qualified nonprofit. And Freedom to Choose comes from Viktor Frankl's quote, which I heard more times during the pandemic than I think I've ever heard it. And somebody, I can't remember who you were, mentioned the opportunity that we all have on a daily basis to choose our attitude regardless of circumstances. And that is a humbling opportunity for me as a human.
We also have a skill set around that actually as part of our curriculum.
And so you can imagine, as hard as it can be here in what our participants would call the free world, how challenging it might be for individuals who are serving time in prison where they have so few outer freedoms. So to find the inner freedom to choose their attitude, to choose their own beliefs about themselves, to craft their own future, that's a big freedom. Inner freedom to make different choices. David, feel free to jump in at any time here.
You're doing great. So this is actually shot from the outside looking in to how when a group of volunteers comes into the prison. Actually, this is shot on the inside looking out. So if you were inside looking out, besides the electrified fence and the razor wire and et cetera, there's someone in that tower there watching you.
And so one of the transformations that's happening in really in the world culture, but we've been focused primarily in the US here, is this transition from a punishment mindset around people who have committed a crime to a rehabilitation mindset. I think the statistic is 95% of people who are incarcerated will be returning to our communities. And so the question is, do we want them to come back as better criminals or as healed and rehabilitated citizens? So you can guess which one we think it should be.
Yes. So here's a great quote, and it's rather typical. I've been incarcerated for 16 years and struggled with the belief that I was unredeemable. But what I learned through freedom to choose is I'm worthy of freedom and to have peace in my heart. So if someone believes they are unredeemable, behavior is consistent with belief. So, and that belief is inaccurate from a psychological point of view. So part of our curriculum is working with those underlying beliefs that really govern a lot of our choices and behaviors. And most of those are deeply unconscious.
And so, Reverend G, you asked how we started this program, and it's kind of an interesting story, actually. Karen hinted that David and I were faculty at a graduate school which gave master's degrees in spiritual psychology called the University of Santa Monica. And there was a woman who was serving 2 life sentences in a California state prison. Her name is Rhonda, and she wrote to all the resources in the back of one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And one of those resources was the president of this university at that time. And she just asked for a talk on self-esteem. And he wasn't quite sure what to do with this, but at some point in time, there was a class that had a service component, and he thought, well, maybe one of the students would want to go and give a talk at this prison. And so he asked the faculty, is there anybody who would be willing to just oversee this, kind of make sure that the student has the support that they need to go do this talk? And David and I both heard, one of those still small voices that said, okay, we can do that. And so we agreed to do that.
It seems easy, just supervise a student. How hard could that be?
Yeah, how hard could that be? And neither of us knew anything about prisons or incarceration. I mean, really, if somebody had told me that I was going to actually go to the prison, I would have said, forget it, not me. So in a way, I would say Spirit tricked me in a good way. It turned out to be a very good thing into saying yes. And so the president wrote back to this woman, Rhonda, who's still incarcerated at the time. And she said, she misunderstood. And she said, oh, that would be great if you brought the whole class. And so when the president got the letter back, he's like, oh no, that's not what I meant. Wait a minute, that's a really creative idea. And so because David and I were already involved, we were the ones who led a group of volunteers to the very first program at Valley State Prison for Women, which at that time was the largest women's prison in the world.
A dubious distinction at best, and a medium to maximum security prison with a pretty substantial degree of violence inside.
And you know, the rest is history, right? We had an amazing experience, all of us. It was in this very room that you're looking at on this slide, Valley State Prison for Women, probably a decade after we got started, became a men's prison. So you'll notice these participants are men.
This is a gymnasium, the interior of a gymnasium.
And so you can see it's quite, we have quite large classroom.
Yep.
And go ahead, David.
If the person is wearing blue, they're incarcerated. Everyone who's not wearing blue, because it's a color we're not permitted to wear in this prison, is not incarcerated, it's a volunteer. And this is just part of the room.
And so when we teach our skills, we work together in small breakout groups. So we'll introduce a concept. It might be a communication skill, or it could be a self-responsibility skill, forgiveness. We have quite an in-depth curriculum, and we'll put, as best we can, a volunteer, and you can see this is Mary in this picture, with 2 participants who are incarcerated. And they will all work together to work through their own life challenges, to practice the skills. So it's highly experiential. And I think it was you, Miriam, who said you were interested in any kind of a transformative journey. And one of the most amazing things to me about this program is the volunteers, as they're modeling the skills, they're not just teaching the skills. They're saying, okay, well, if the challenge is, who is somebody in my life that I'm having trouble forgiving, they're going to go into their own experience and they're going to talk about, well, you know, I'm having this challenge with my brother or my sister or my spouse or whoever, whatever they choose to share. They're going to actually do that work with the support of the incarcerated participant who's sitting right across from them. And so it is an extraordinary transformative journey for all of us, really.
And someone asked about working with emotions as they relate to health. We'll cover it later, but these are really emotional skills, and emotions are here and now. So learning about emotions doesn't teach you how to work with your emotions. Working with your emotions is the essential skill set that we're teaching, and it's actually surprisingly simple. Not necessarily easy at first, but simple.
And so our tagline, Change from the Inside, is a double entendre. We're changing ourselves from the inside as we change how we think and how we feel, and we heal the issues that we have going on in our life at any time. It automatically starts to transform our outer behavior. For our participants, so many of them have extremely traumatic backgrounds, whether that was growing up in the gang culture or trauma they experienced in their families. The amount of healing work that they have to do is significant. And often they come to our workshop feeling, I mean, they have descriptions like, I was told I would never amount to anything. I'm a failure. I'm a monster. They call me the devil. The self-identities that these individuals carry is shocking. And so, as David said a little while ago, if somebody believes that truly about themselves, it's extremely difficult for them to behave in any way that is aligned with their true inner goodness. So they become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so a huge part of our work is to help them switch those beliefs, to release the negativity around that, those limiting beliefs, and to discover and express the goodness that they are inside. And after 20 years, it's just really working.
Yeah, and one of the things we emphasize and we do our best to communicate from this place, and so do all of our volunteers. Everyone's automatically worthy of respect and dignity. That's because they're a human being. That's sort of automatic. And at the core of every person is, I'd say, the experience of impersonal or divine love, agape love, and that is, we haven't. I just tell people, and it's in my experience, we've worked with thousands and thousands of people. I haven't seen the exception yet. And we're working in places where people have forgotten who they are in a way. So
here's another picture from one of the breakout policies. And you can see the joy on the faces, and that is a natural byproduct. You know, our experience is that when you remove the negativity, the trauma, the sadness, the despair, the grief, then what emerges is like when the clouds part and you see the sun shining behind them, that the natural joy and goodness of who each person is can shine forth. And so somebody asked about, well, how do you get them to listen to you? And I will say that when I first was contemplating our first trip, I was so nervous about that, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to just laugh me out of the room. They're going to say, you don't know anything about my life. Why should I listen to you? And I'm grateful to say, so I had a backup plan if they actually did say something like that. But I've never had to respond to a comment like that. The amount of gratitude that we experience for our volunteering, our willingness to come in, to sit with people that just, I mean, sounds like a crazy thing, but just to treat them like human beings, to listen, to have lunch together, is the amount of gratitude is extraordinary. I mean, the people we work with are so hungry to change. They desperately want a different life. And because of the historical punishment model of our prison system, that has been, that's not how prisons were designed. They were not designed to help people heal. They were designed to deepen wasn't intentional probably to deepen the trauma, but that is the result for most of the people who spend time in prison.
yeah, I do want to mention that the woman in purple with the white silver hair on the left side of your screen, she was our first volunteer, and she'll be attending, we've all lost track of how many workshops she's taken, but it's a lot. And how old was her birthday? Her birthday was, she's 93, I think.
93. She just turned 93. Yeah.
So.
And so she's one of our most popular volunteers, not only because she's so inspiring and so full of life, such a young at heart, but she also represents the grandmother energy. And while many people had so many difficulties with their parents, often their grandparents were supportive and caring and loving. And so she gets to be everybody's grandma, and they call her Grandma Rocks. They just adore her.
Yeah, and let's say if you're familiar with there's something called an adverse childhood experience, and there's a numerical score. Everyone, 99.99% of people who are incarcerated in the United States have extremely high ACE scores. So a lot of trauma.
So here's another picture of the whole room. And again, this is one of our volunteers with her sweatshirt on. And I mean, this is the bottom line of what we're doing. We bring in a lot of skills. We teach a lot of important things. But I think the most important thing we do is we bring an impersonal loving, unconditional positive regard, and a willingness to live without judgment.
Yeah, and I do want to mention it. You know, I think it's for this particular workshop. I think the waiting list among the men to get in was well in excess of 200. At one time, it was up to 300. So the value is recognized by the participants inside, and we also on these larger workshops, because there's a significant Spanish-speaking population in California, we conduct our programs and simultaneously in English and Spanish through simultaneous translation and FM radios. So it's actually kind of a sophisticated opportunity for teaching, because when people, because of the hurt was laid down as children, working in the primary language with emotional issues goes right to the heart of the issue, as opposed to getting a translation through the mind.
And here are a couple of quotes. Since that first prison project, we've expanded and we have some sort of program in nearly every prison in California. So a lot of that expansion actually happened over the time of the pandemic, when, of course, just like everybody else, we had to stop all of our in-person programming, but we very quickly pivoted and created a correspondence course. And so somehow, I mean, this is how Spirit works, right? We were in, I think it was 5 or 6 prisons in person at the time. We sent correspondence packets to all of our participants, knowing that as isolated as we felt, they felt even more so in lockdown in prison, you know, in the COVID lockdown. And somehow, one day I was talking to our operations manager and I asked her how many prisons we had packets going to. And she said, I think she said 36. And I said, no, not how many people, how many prisons. And she said 36. So we don't know how that happened. This is the miracle of how Spirit does its work to bring what's needed forward into the world.
I have a different view.
What is your different view?
You can't keep a secret in the prison. That's all. It's like impossible. So people look at, because the people taking this change, and people see the change. You can't hide who you are when you're in that kind of close quarters. And so, and they recognize that, and so they start just asking because they want the same.
All right, so here's this is our volunteer team that
this is before COVID.
Right before COVID closed us all down. And so I'll bet that let's see, I'll spend too much time looking, but probably the people who are here, our volunteers who showed up today, are probably in this photo. Anyway, you can see it's large volunteer teams.
And everyone's smiling.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit more at the end about what you can do if you want to join us ever as a volunteer. So a couple of just storylines to fill in here. So we started as a university project, and I think it was about 6 years in, the program was growing. David and I were volunteering, and the university said, well, you know, this is great work. We really support you. And if you want to keep expanding, this is not really our mission. So why don't you go create your own nonprofit? So we did do that. And since then, the work has continued to expand, and we're funded primarily by private donations and the California Department of Corrections grants. As I said, rehabilitation. Oh, I do see Karen. She's right at the very tippy top of that picture. The prison system is still really attempting to fully embody this concept of rehabilitation.
But one of the things that happened at the women's prison where we started for the first 10 years was within a couple of years, enough people had taken a small group, but they were influential enough that the culture in the prison started to shift. And they created an honor dorm. The rate of violence went down. When we started, there was two what they call self-help groups, an AA and an NA group, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. I think 3 years later, there was 80 self-help groups where the women would be helping each other. So they had domestic violence, and they had grief groups for family who died while they were incarcerated. There's the skills sort of free people. Learning these skills sort of freed everyone from the hurts, and then they were able to really create stuff that would accelerate their healing, and ultimately the prisons releases when the parole board is convinced that they're no longer a danger to society, they send them home. And we've had people reunite with their families, and even mail the handouts home and work with their children over the phone and their 15-minute phone calls to reestablish how the communication and caring and all that kind of stuff.
And so you might imagine that for people who feel like David has referred to how our culture typically relates to people who are incarcerated, as they're kind of the lepers of our society. And certainly I was terrified to go into a prison the first time I went in. The first number of times I went in, when we first went to a men's prison, that was scary for me. And so part of my journey has been to just become a lot less fearful in the world. I mean, it's ironic, right? All the service that I've done in prison among people who have committed some pretty challenging crimes, pretty difficult crimes, I feel so much safer in the world because I can see that they're not a label called criminal. The vast majority of them are people who have made bad choices, that grew up in the gang culture, and that was just what they did. That was what their families did. And so it's really helped me feel more connected to the entire world. And so you can imagine these people who've gone through the justice system, and they land in prison, and the structure of prison is to reinforce that they are the bad people, and then those people who are in the free world, the staff, are the good people. You bring in a group of 30, 50, 70 free world volunteers, people who are paying their own way, some of whom flew across the country to be there for a weekend, to spend their weekend in prison. That demonstration of caring and of love really hits people in the heart. Like, wow, you care enough to do this, to give up your time, to pay your own way. And then we trust them enough to tell them the challenges in our own life. And of course, sitting in their seat, they imagine, well, the free world people, they have it all figured out. Everybody's got this great life, and I'm the one who has who's messed up everything. And it doesn't take very long before we're all sharing our just normal life challenges, where we all go, oh my goodness, underneath everything, we really are all the same. We all have challenges. We all have sadness. We all have trauma. And so in a way, it levels the entire playing field, and we all get to learn and grow together. So that was an accidental finding, right? We didn't expect to have anything in particular happen when we started this work. But it's been an absolutely glorious, transformative journey.
Yeah, and by word of mouth, which is probably the best referral, we're starting to go to more places, certainly expanding our correspondence curriculum, which is, we were, in the case of several prisons, it's like we were going to go in and COVID wouldn't let us for a year or two, depending on when the grant cycle came in. So all the people who were there had was the correspondence curriculum. And when we set up a team of volunteers, I'll use the most recent one was Folsom State Prison, of Johnny Cash fame, I guess, if you're familiar with the music world. All the people there, their entire exposure to the work was the correspondence curriculum. And our volunteers and our facilitators reported they came in way ahead of any beginning group. They were surprised at the depth and effectiveness of a correspondence curriculum that's read by somebody and responded to in a prizing, affirmative way. So it's I guess I have to tell one story about the men. Bonnie was just scared to death, and the reason we started working with men is it was a women's prison, and we got called into the warden's office one day, and we go, oh boy, and it's like getting called to the principal's office, right? And he spends an hour convincing us to stay and work with the men. So you do what the word tells you. So we said fine, and
I said a few more things than that, but
ultimately,
your story.
Yeah, ultimately. So we do a presentation to the men, tell them what's going to go on small group so they could invite people you think might be interested. And so 75 men, we want to limit the size of the workshop the first time. We only did 75 men, plus our volunteer team. And we heard the following things sort of over and over. Like I had they call it a ducat. It's a permission to go to a workshop. And I said, look, I didn't want to not honor this, but I told my roomies that I'll be back because I work all week. And this is a Saturday, Sunday. I didn't want to spend that in the gym. But when I walked in, I could feel the love. And so I had to stay. And actually, the men turned out to be much more emotionally expressive than the women. So one of the things about this work is everyone who attends our workshop wanted to. It's a voluntary option people have. So it's not a requirement. I don't know how it would work as a requirement. People have to be self-motivated to change. So if they are, this is an excellent skill set.
So one of the pieces I want to fill in that David touched on is our correspondence program originally was just packets sent, and some people could do the exercises and then they would get a certificate. And one of our staff members at that time had been incarcerated in our program. And what he said was, you know, even if somebody's in a university course while they're in prison, they send their homework and they pour their hearts into these papers, and then they get back like, you know, one word, good job. And so he was joking, and he said, you know, at some point we wanted to bury in there, is anybody really reading this? You know, because they didn't feel seen and they didn't feel heard. And so I said, oh my goodness, well, let's create a team of volunteers who will read the homework and provide supportive, encouraging feedback to the incarcerated participants. And so that program, again, has just absolutely bloomed. And our participants just love it. For some of them, it's the first time anybody's ever told them, yes, you can do it. You're good at something. I mean, can you imagine being an adult and having never heard anything that you're good at and only been told that there's something wrong with you and you're a failure? I mean, it's no wonder sometimes people land themselves in prison. And so that is a very beautiful, we call it a reader program, but it goes so much beyond reading. I mean, somebody reads the homework and they really share their heart and their encouragement. Some of our readers live across the country. So because of this beautiful Zoom world that we have and all of the technology, we can support people volunteering from anywhere, including, for example, Michigan.
Or is it okay if I ask a question or two?
Absolutely, please do.
All right.
Please.
So just to remind, first of all, that our session usually lasts an hour and a half, so it goes till about 8:30. And I have a few questions, and then I'll open it up to everybody. So one of my questions is, what was your backup plan if they said that, hey, what are you doing talking to us?
Yes. Okay. So here's what I came to. So David and I co-facilitate the course, and he's not as scared of the world as I am. So I had two pieces of backup plan. First, I never ever pretend to know what somebody else should do with their life. And I realized I can only share my experience, and my expertise really is not in what their life experience has been. It's in the skills that we teach. And so just to be really clear, everything that we teach is offered with an open hand. They can try it out, see if it works for them. And if not, that's absolutely their choice. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is I thought, well, I would just let David respond to them.
David, you're the backup plan. So when you first went to the prison, because of that letter, was it you with the class, or just the two of you with that one student? How was that first time? And how did it grow out of that? And then I also want to know about volunteers. How do you recruit them? And then how do you train them? I imagine that they have to have pretty excessive training before you let them loose in there.
Those are great questions.
It's a great question. So, so before we went up, they had a woman, Sylvia, and she was like the liaison, and she had actually helped Rhonda write the letters. You know, like why don't you write letters and write? Like Rhonda wrote for years before someone responded. We found out recently, and so we had to go up, and we were vetted by the people there. So Bonnie and I went up to the prison, and we spent an afternoon there. And we met with her, we met with the chaplain. They wanted to make sure we weren't some sort of crazies, you know. And we explained, you know, our qualifications, well, what we were going to do. And we had no idea if this was an experiment. We had no idea if anyone would be interested. So
at this point, you had a curriculum that you
Well,
decided they would
actually-
adapt to the prison, or
Yeah,
what was it?
we actually there was a curriculum, we just took a couple of handouts from the master's degree class and brought it up there as a talking point. And we would teach the skill and put people in groups of 3, and we had some volunteers. And so we always, at that point, you know, everyone was in a group of 3. And we were told, they just made it out, there's a workshop going on if you want to attend. Some people thought it was creative writing. So if you want to attend, show up. I mean, there's not much going on at the prison, right? So what about 50 women maybe
I
show up?
think it was around, yeah, 50-ish.
50-ish, give or take, a little over 50. And Sylvia says, look, we have speakers here all the time. If only a third of them leave at the first break, consider yourself wildly successful. So no one left. So, oh, okay, there's interest here. So there was such a great response from the first workshop. We learned a couple of things. One, the reading level, we read everything out loud because we don't know who can read or not, right? There's people who are illiterate. And second of all, it was too wordy, and after some research, we had to rewrite everything at the 8th grade reading level, which is the target reading level. But it was basically just the caring and the loving that did the work. I think we could have read the phone book, you know, literally. But having a skill that is useful is even better. So that it just, and then so 6 months we did it, and we go, you know, that was really successful. I wonder if we should go back. The university goes, you're on your own. So we went back with another team. And then we go, well, maybe we should go back a third time. By a third time, we're starting to put together checklists, because you have to go into a medium to max security prison, which is what the women's prison was. You have to get clear. You have to get security clearance. They want to find out, do you have a warrant? Have you been in prison before? Do you have any? Could you be a threat if you go in? So it's, you know, so there's a bunch of work that goes into getting a volunteer inside a prison that we handle for them. It's just basically you need to bring your driver's license to show who you are, and it can't be expired. And that's how it just grew. It's like one step after another, and then we realize, oh, the teams are getting bigger. Oh, we need to start creating handbooks on how we organize stuff, you know, and it just grew organically.
You had a second part to the question, G.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, I'm curious about how do you recruit volunteers, and about the training. I'm assuming that you train them. You don't just let them
Yes.
loose.
Yeah, here, one of the things that emerged earlier, I'm just going to divert something. So the training, the original volunteers were all grads. They had master's
Of this master's degree
university
program.
So everyone had a master's degree. So we had a really highly trained initial group, right? But as we started doing the workshops more and more, we couldn't bring enough volunteers in to put someone who knew the skills in with all the new people who wanted to be there. So we started, the women who took the workshop, if they took the workshop once, they had enough training to help the next 2 people take the workshop for the first time. So we created a program we called Mentors. And then at some point we would do a third day, we would do an advanced workshop for these women. And then we were able to work with a larger group of new people. So as the same people kept doing the skills over and over, because they're iterative, their skill level got really good. So the amount of training for a new volunteer is actually, we do it now on Zoom, so they understand how to work in a trio. And we treat them as if they were a first-time participant, and we put them with someone who's done it before. So it's one of those, do one, and you can help teach it. Because the skills are that simple.
That is brilliant. Speaking of empowerment, like people who have always been put down and now they're empowered.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That's a really insightful awareness, because it's not, they're mentoring each other, but the amount of wisdom that they share, like if I'm working with my, you know, it's my turn to share about my life in a trio process, the amount of wisdom that this incarcerated person reflects back to me is shocking, really. And to your point, it's an opportunity for them to be of service and to have that kind of it really boosts their self-esteem.
Huge, huge. And so there's,
Yeah.
so that's, so training new volunteers is actually, fortunately, simple.
Yeah, that was one of my follow-up questions. How many times do you touch an inmate? And obviously several times if they become volunteers themselves. And by touch, I mean, how many times do you work with the same person?
Oh, well, what happened was the women were great, but men organize. You know, men in a prison will organize very fast. So we go to the first workshop with the men and they go, okay, twice a year is not going to be enough. We want to organize a group. We're willing to meet with you once a month or twice a month. If you could do small, what they call, they have like 2-hour opportunities to meet as a group and do what they want. And so we organized continuing classes where we'd review the material twice a month for 2 hours with small groups. And so that grew into, we had 1 year of curriculum. Then we had 2 years of curriculum. Then we had 3, we're teaching skills in these small groups that we had trouble with students at the master's degree level wanting to even do, like with very deep skills like inner child work, projection work, owning projections, really advanced skills. Their skill level exceeded many of our students. And Karen smiling because she could probably comment on that firsthand. Can I call on Karen to answer that one? Because I see she's smiling.
Well, I'm laughing about the projection because, you know, a projection skill is when you see it, you know, you spot it, you got it. And I forget, you know, unless I start using the skills, and I'm inspired by the men that not only that, but they love it. Like the bonding that happens in that group. And then on top of it, their cellmates hear about it and they're like, what are you doing? I want to do this. So the next thing you know, we've got 300 people waiting at the door to get in. I mean, it's extraordinary. I'm just excited listening to you guys. I'm so happy I got on the call. This is great.
So I see we have other questions. So
Yes.
Eric, you raised your hand? Yeah.
Eric, did you, who had a question? I don't
Sure.
see.
I think Karen just answered my question. I was just curious if there was a challenge for people who've gone through your curriculum going back into the prison population with their buddies and friends, and if there was like friction there. But it sounds like, I'm just curious how the skills they learned in your class translated back into their day-to-day life with their friends in the environment as well as staff. I'm just curious if staff have been appreciative of a shift in behavior or attitudes or depression or any of that.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Eric. The skills that we teach, a lot of them are self-management skills. And so it's, so many people have landed themselves in prison because their reaction to stressors in their life was violent. And so to teach people not only anger management skills, but how to resolve those triggers, the roots of those triggers in the first place, that translates to every aspect of life. As you know, any human can relate to this, right? So it improves their relationships with their cellmates, with their friends, with their family. I mean, a lot of them will take the skills and they will actually teach their family members who are parenting their children over the phone, which, I mean, that's something that I'm humbled by. But it's so, you can imagine, those of you who are parents, how hard it would be to parent. I mean, it's hard to parent all together, right? I think that's one of the hardest jobs on the planet. And then to try and do that from within prison, it's quite a thing that they teach their sisters and parents who are parenting their children. So that's one aspect. And then we do have testimonials from a number of the prison staff, the wardens, the correctional officers, who notice, well, now these people are more cooperative. One of the skills we teach, we have a kitschy way of, we try to have fun when we do this together. So one of our team affirmations is, we are so flexible, because prison doesn't really flex, right? So if there's going to be flexing that happens, it's often has to be in our team. And this turns out to be an absolutely foundational life skill. And so we often hear from our participants when they get back into the free world that affirmation is life-saving for them, because their families haven't really changed as much as they have transformed in our program. So it gives them the ability to respond to their family members, many of whom are still angry at them for the things that they did, for having been in prison, for having abandoned their children because they were in prison. I mean, there's just the dynamics of relationship for people coming out of prison are significant.
You know, and we kind of think that some of this work, by doing this, we're helping to break the intergenerational cycles of abuse and violence. So it's actually, most of the time, we heard from the men's prison, when we had really good, by that time we knew all the staff at the prison. It's like the guys who got out of the first workshop, everyone wanted to, they go, what did you do? And how can I go? How can I get that? Can I be like you? So it's, it's more of how do we overcome the barriers the prison puts up because of their structure, as opposed to demand from inside.
Deborah, did you have a question?
You spoke about the ward, going to the warden's office and the warden really wanting you to be there. And then you talked about some of the staff, realizing that these inmates had changed. So I was wondering if you see anything sort of at the administrative, and you said you really see the culture shifting in the prisons. And I wondered if that's also at the administrative level, at the criminal justice level, if, so that it could actually help support them in what they're learning.
Yeah. Bonnie, you want to respond to that?
Sure. Yeah. So that is a great question. And we're seeing, I would say the change in this regard, Deborah, is slow. Systems take time to shift. So we do need a lot of individuals inside who are staff members inside the prison who are very supportive of rehabilitation. And we also meet a lot of those who are still very much in the punishment mindset. So there's a lot of push-pull still in the entire system. Now in California, where we do most of our work, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has recognized that organizations like ours are much more effective and much more cost effective in rehabilitation work than many of their own programs. So they've been giving out increasing numbers of grants to our kind of organization over the last, probably the last decade, right, David? Maybe not quite that much time.
6 years, 5, 6 years. It's an increase. And now that they actually have significant public support, like our local representative from our Santa Barbara County. He's a big proponent of the culture shift, and we're seeing the talk by CDCR about changing the culture and focusing on rehabilitation, and they need to, because there's the most of the difference, it's almost a cliche, but it's pretty close to the truth. The difference between the people who are incarcerated and the people who are the correctional officers guarding them is one group has the keys, but the amount of trauma that they experience is pretty close, if not worse, for the correctional officers. So one of the things we've learned by talking to the staff is the average survival time after retirement of a correctional officer in California is 5 years.
Wow.
Whoa. And that's the cumulative trauma. So one of the things we'd love to be able to do is, because in our day jobs, we're volunteers, but in our day jobs, we teach a version of these skills to police, fire, first responders, physicians, nurses, and healthcare, because of high rates of burnout. Because the amount of training nurses and physicians and first responders, police and fire and paramedics, those are the primary groups we work with, get in the skill set of how do I deal with secondary trauma, approaches zero.
Wow.
So it takes a tremendous physical toll on people. We don't have time to go into all the physiology behind that. It's fascinating, but the resolution is the skill set.
And so we're starting to hear rumblings at the state level that the governor would like to create an example prison that would be more along the Norway model. And if you've heard anything about that, that's a very holistic model where the staff and it's a very humanistic model, let's call it, where the staff treats the incarcerated people like community members. So there's a lot of cultural differences that make Norway and the United States not equivalent, but we're starting to hear these kinds of rumblings. So there's a lot of good.
We're hopeful.
That's a good way to put it. There's the light at the end of the tunnel, let's say.
It's not a freight train. Yeah.
Serena's had her hand up for a little while. Do you have a question, Serena?
Hey, I'm not sure if you can hear, but I'm a new volunteer and I'm going down to Valley State Prison in mid-March, and I have a question about
We heard you right up until the time you said I have a question about, and then it went blank. So we all want to know what the question is. You're muted. Serena, you need to unmute. It got muted.
Sorry, I think the connection was bad.
Yeah.
I'm a new volunteer and I'm going down to Valley State Prison in March. And I'm wondering the format, is it set up like trios in there or bigger groups or similar?
Trios.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. That's exciting. We'll look forward to meeting you in person. And we have, I don't know if you've gotten the email yet, but we do have 2 training events that are designed to answer all these questions for you as a new volunteer. The first one is next Saturday on March 2nd. So if you need to reply to, I'm going to put an email in the chat. And so if you didn't get that email or it got spam filtered, you can let's connect and I'll make sure you get that information.
Okay, yeah, I did, and I did sign up. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll look forward to meeting you there again, Serena.
So we have a question in the chat from Mary Ann. She's a volunteer in the women's prison in Huron Valley and on the east side of Michigan, and she's wondering how to get the program into that facility.
That is awesome, Mary Ann. Thank you for your service in your community. We are working actually on packaging our programs so that individuals like yourself can start a program in your own community. So when I put the email in the chat, I encourage you to sign up so that when we're ready with that, we can talk more. You can learn more. That's awesome. Here, I'll just put the website in.
Yeah, good.
Oh, I think I have the website. I've checked the website.
Great. So sign up for email announcements.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of our facilitators actually moved, Dr. Karen Peterson, she moved to Michigan. She's not sure if I know what city she's in. She's along the lake somewhere. But she was excited to hear that we were speaking with all of you today, because I'm sure she'll be excited to bring a program to, I know Michigan's a big place, but.
We're trying to make connections with everyone around the state, actually, next week. We've been putting out information just to see where people want to go. So maybe I'll meet her. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's great. So make sure that you send an email. I'll put my email in the chat.
I will as well.
Mary Ann, so that you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with Karen.
Is she in Michigan now, or is she in California?
She's currently in California for a little while, but she has a new grandbaby in Michigan. So there's a massive
That's where she's going to end up.
to your neck of the woods. Anybody else?
I'm curious if you're familiar with, I've followed some of Fleet Mall's work. He has worked in prisons, has done a lot with meditation practice. I know there's a prison ashram initiative as well, but I didn't know if you'd come across Fleet Mall's work or not. He was incarcerated for about 15 years and developed a program that is pretty interesting as well.
I don't know his program specifically, but I will say that programs like that are another really powerful way to support people in their transformation. Yeah, so there's a lot of programs doing really beautiful work. And the heart of it is the heart of each person who shows up to just care. I mean, it's a little amazing how much just demonstrating that we care makes such a difference. And it's almost like people have, when they're in this self-belief that they're not worth caring about, they'll take somebody's look, like if somebody just looks askance this way, their interpretation is filtered through that belief system. Oh, they don't like me. They don't want to talk to me. Instead of like, oh, they just saw something over there. I mean, our filters that we apply are so invisible to us very often. And so when you bring people together and it's really apparent, wait a minute, this person paid money to fly across the country. They're sitting with me. They could be out like having fun on a beautiful day, but instead they're paying for a hotel room to be in this, crazy town in the middle of the state and to sit with me and listen to me. It busts all these ideas about their lack of worth and value. And so when I look at the world and the challenges that we have of feeling separate and different and disconnected from one another, I think we just need more of this kind of thing. We need more of being together and sitting together and caring for one another, independent of whether we agree with each other. It's just the loving care from one human to another. So for me, this is part of what I do to contribute to world peace.
And by the way, I want to be clear about one thing. We actually do not go to prison. We visit the prison. It's a subtle but distinct difference.
Important distinction.
So I imagine when you first started,
You went on mute.
You went on mute.
everything went away. Everything went away. I couldn't see anybody or myself. Anyway, I imagine when you first started, you had an idea how this would unfold. Perhaps you even had some expectations of how this work would translate to this population. And how much of that came true, and then what was the big surprise? I imagine there was.
I was talking to the president of the university. We're driving home after the first workshop, and the first words he said, "Well, how was it?" I said, "Well, if I would have had expectations, they would have been exceeded." Mm-hmm. So we really had no idea. So we just went in, let's say, completely open. Let's see if this works. No attachment one way or the other. It was like I was curious. We kind of did everything, they suggested. They served lunch. It was 85 cents per person for either eyeball meat or rancid peanut butter and jelly. We drank prison coffee, which gave us a new standard to compare coffee to. And it just didn't matter. It's just we had no idea. We didn't even know we didn't go in saying we were going to start a program. That didn't emerge till about the fourth time we went. Maybe. So that just said, well, this seems to have a positive response. And so it's like that inner prompting was say, what's the next step? And then the next step. And it was just one of those, a choice after a choice after a choice. That was my experience. Bonnie might have a different view of it, but we thought when we first went in, we thought it was a one-time shot. We had no idea.
And then
it's an interesting question, G. I was surprised by how eager people were and how the participants, how grateful they were. Because I had only encountered people who were incarcerated on television. And, I would just stay away. I was a terrified, shy little person. And I would just stay away from anybody who looked, scary. And so I was incredibly shy wallflower type when I was growing up. And so it was really an opportunity for me to bust through all these stereotypes. And that's a huge part of what happens, full circle, 360 degrees in the workshops, because we all have stereotypes about each other. And that's been incredibly beautiful. And then the other thing that was surprising once we started to kind of realize, oh, we want to keep doing this work, is how difficult it was to fundraise. People, the amount of prejudice and disdain for this population is extensive. And that has changed quite a lot in recent years as Orange is the New Black, on Netflix came into our living rooms. And so there's been a humanizing effect for those individuals who are incarcerated. And then the issues with systemic racism and systemic incarceration, those have really illuminated, opened people's eyes and hearts. So that's a huge part of the transformation that we're seeing in the system. And as I said, it's slow for systems to change.
So I just have 2 questions right now that I can think of, and please, others, if you have questions, don't be shy, please ask away. Mine are 2. Yesterday when we talked, I asked you, how do you measure your success? And you shared with me, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to share with the group as well. And then the second part is about the fundraising. How do you go about it? How would groups be able to support you? And so just pitch that for us.
I'll talk about the results. So one of the challenges at every agency, even government agencies in California, is the privacy laws. So the ability to go to some sort of database and find out who's been incarcerated and where are they now doesn't exist. Even their own agencies are forbidden from reporting it to each other. It's one of the interesting things about working in the system. We did have an opportunity. Someone really probably did something. They bent the rules a little bit, and we got data on the first 75 women who did 5 or more workshops over the first probably maybe almost 10 years, 11 years that we were doing the workshops with the women. And we were only doing workshops twice a year. That was the extent of our intervention. Of the first 75 women, 73 remained out, were fine. 1 person had a parole violation, which at that time put her back in prison. Wouldn't today, but and they missed a parole meeting because public transportation broke down, but it doesn't matter the reason. When you miss the meeting, it's an automatic return to prison. And 1 person probably left the country because they were lost to follow-up. Our guess is they went back to Mexico, where I believe they were from. So we counted the person who went away because we lost her to follow-up as we don't know, but and we counted the person who missed the parole violation as not really an offense. So 94% of the women we saw in that first group stayed out.
And then normally, what would that be?
For women in California during that period of time, it was 50% return to prison within 3 years. And usually that was within 18 months.
Yeah, that's.
So it's a significant difference.
Sure.
So, and we did self-surveys, and we found that 86% of the people would teach the skills to a friend or family, and that 90% reported their lives were more peaceful. Because it really takes 2 people to get in a fight.
Yeah.
So if one of them's not fighting and just saying, "Yeah, I hear you and I hear what you're saying," or like.
Although I'm really good at that. I can start a fight in here easily.
Yes, we're all united by our humanity, right? I think we started out by saying how challenging the freedom to choose can sometimes be.
Right.
That's humbling every single day. And the second part of your question, which I appreciate so much, is
before we go on to fundraising, there was a follow-up question in the chat about was there a difference between the short and long-term sentences and recidivism?
That is a great question, Marianne, and it's a relevant one, and we don't have the answer to that because, as David said, the privacy laws are so extreme in California.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we're more experts in education as opposed to the system per se.
We're still working on that. We still hold a vision that we will gain more
Correction.
comprehensive outcome data. But the and just historically, you may have heard that there have been abuses that were perpetrated upon people who are incarcerated in terms of research and medical research. And so their very strong protections have been put into place. In my view, the pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction because, simply knowing if somebody who took our class is in or out of prison, to me, does not create an abuse. But I understand the roots of the protections that are put in place. So we're still working on that.
So are we. Thank you.
Okay, and then if somebody would like to make a donation, we are always open for this, so gratefully received. As David mentioned, he and I are still volunteers in this work. We're grateful to be able to do that. And we do have, I think we have 6 or 7 people on our paid staff right now, 3 of whom were program participants when they were incarcerated, including the woman, Rhonda, who wrote the letter that started the whole thing. And so she got out recently. And as Serena had hinted, we have our 20th anniversary workshop coming up in about a month at Valley State Prison, where the whole program started. And Rhonda is going to be one of the facilitators. So that is a full circle moment. And she's awesome. When we call them alumni, our previously incarcerated program participants, when they talk, it's like David and I are not even in the room, and in the best possible way, because they're speaking from their life experience. And so in many ways, it's another one of those surprises. We thought those individuals would come forward and be able to take over this work a lot sooner than has been the case. But we've been, holding down the fort, being the best we can to be good stewards of the work until they were ready and came. So
there's nothing like someone who's been there and done that saying, I was sitting in your seat at, whatever, how many years ago, and I know what's going on. And when she spoke, you could hear a pin drop.
Well, and Rhonda made it happen, really. I mean,
Yeah.
she's the catalyst.
She was the catalyst. Yeah.
She was the pebble that started the avalanche.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you would like to make a donation, you can go to our website. That link is in the chat. And
Miriam just shared it in the chat.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Yeah.
Miriam is so good like that.
Every dollar, we make those donor dollars really stretch. So.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if you'd like to join our reading team, it's a great way to participate. And we'll train you. And it requires...
And you can join the reading team online as well, I assume.
Yeah, that's an online activity.
In fact, Rhonda, who's the woman who started the whole thing, she's one of the staff members who supports the readers. So it's a great way to just hear firsthand the impact that your contributions make.
Yeah, our future, we've been aiming from the beginning. Once we started doing the nonprofit, we've been aiming from the beginning to go upstream. So why wait till they get in prison? Why not see if we can intervene earlier? So I have a short-term goal, which is we'd like to move into the jail system, and we've got a pilot program running in one, and word of mouth got us a pilot program in the second sheriff, county jail level in California. And then the skills are actually quite simple. They're iterative and they're simple, and children learn them. And a lot of people have taught their kids these skill sets, which we warn people, if you teach the children these skill sets, they will play it back on you. So just yeah, we told you so. Don't come back to us. They're going to hold your feet to the fire. Our goal is ultimately, I'd like to see this in the elementary school curriculum. You know,
Yeah.
that would be
going really upstream.
that would be a next step towards upstream. I'm not sure what the ultimate is, but you know, that's a really it's a long-term goal. Things are slow.
I am looking at the time, and we're already a little bit over. I see that, Deborah, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just to that point, I was going to say going upstream, you said jails. What about juvenile? You know,
We're juvenile. Yeah, I know this might shock you. But we might. Rhonda is now leading our first opportunity to be working with juveniles up in her area.
Wonderful.
And see that the people who have lived experience have a lot more credibility, but it's still the loving that makes the difference.
right.
So so that's and one of our board members is very active on that. You know, so we're looking actively into how do we be in the juvenile level as well.
Great.
So first of all, thank you so much. And it's been absolutely wonderful. And before we released you, you know, speaking of loving, sometimes loving is a very, well, sometimes it's just very heavy, deep, and real. And I would like, Eric, would you speak into the next Thoughtful Thursday that is coming up? Because it's a very important conversation, and it's a very timely and unfortunately extremely painful conversation. And Eric, why don't you introduce it to us?
Well, I didn't know you were going to ask me, but we'll see if I have this on the tip. Ahmed Shif is a Sufi teacher. He was a professor at Duke University. And he just recently had an interview on the SAND YouTube network. I think it's Science and Non-Duality, but he's quite an amazing, compassionate person. As a Sufi, that's kind of the core of their teachings around love. And he spoke very passionately in this hour-long YouTube video about how we could begin a healing process between the Israelis, the Jews, and the folks of Gaza, many of whom are Muslim. And what will be required at the center of that was a lot around love, looking at long-term intergenerational trauma, examining that, and beginning a long-term healing process. So we'll have a program where he presents for probably 30, 40 minutes, and he'll be joining us for the question and answer period after that. And we'll be able to learn more about what he's doing to help heal the rift and the trauma that's occurring right now in Israel and Gaza. It's a very challenging piece to watch because there's real life stories of people losing all of their family members, orphans, and but it's real. It's the reality of what's happening. And hopefully you can come and join us, and we can engage the broader community here and put pressure on our U.S. representatives to stand up a bit more in that situation and stand up for justice and humanity and humanitarian relief.
Yeah, we just can't look away. Well, same as with the incarcerated population, and same as with Gaza, Israel, we just can't look away. So this is what we have coming up. And thank you again. Thank you, Bonnie and Paul, for sharing. Oh, what a wonderful evening. And I am just so grateful that you're out there in the world. You're such good people. And you can have this absolute gratification and satisfaction that you're making a huge difference in the world. And I'm grateful that you are. And thank you all. And look at Karen, because you volunteer, and Marianne, and Serena, who she may not be with us anymore. Thank you for doing this wonderful work, and we shall see how we can also join in ways small or big, as it is our part to do as well. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us. The next time we're together is March, was it 24? No, 1st, 8th?
March 21st.
21st.
7 p.m.
21st.
Eastern time.
Miriam knows you can't trust me with dates. So thank you. Good night. Good afternoon.
Thank you all.
And thank you for joining us. And bye.